Welcome to Talk Too Late. I am Game Too Late, and this is a little show where we talk about games and games industry news from 2 years ago. In this special episode, we're going to be talking about something that we could call the hypocrisy of gamers and games journalists. In one particular regard, I'm talking about the effort that developers put into making their games and the reaction of the community when these games suffer delay or there are miscommunications around it, or there comes the rumor that these games had to be made by resorting to certain bad management practices such as crunch or having crazy overtimes. It's going to be an interesting talk because we need to flip the table and change the narrative and go a bit deeper into that conversation to really look at how really hard it is to make games and why we as gamers sometimes react in a hypocritical or childish way. To do so, we're going to be joined by our amazing guest, Mik
Hi guys.
and Prosil.
Hello, guys.
Prosil is appearing a little thumbnail. That's because I apologize. That's because Skype decides to do that, and we cannot help him.
We call it Tiny Prosil.
Tiny Prosil, but we can assure you that we are not reducing Prosil in size malevolently or intentionally. It just happens, and he's also physically well. We're not actually reducing him. Anyway, I just wanna join you guys because gamers are terrible, aren't they? Right? That's where we're going. Now let's
Here we are.
let's approach it a bit more democratically. Let's just say that making games is really hard, and that gamers obviously they want these games to push the boundaries because we have been gamers for like 20 decades. Let's just say decades. We don't want to age ourselves, but yeah, as gamers, we're always waiting for that title that is gonna push the boundaries, that is gonna make things better, that is gonna make things more interesting, that is gonna push the technological envelope, so to speak. 2 years ago, there was the release of a game that really did push the technological aspect, and the scale and scope of the project was beyond ambitious. We're talking about Red Dead Redemption 2, which we mentioned in our previous episode of the Talk Too Late show, which you can find on YouTube. So Red Dead Redemption 2 is a massive undertaking. That's why Rockstar takes years to develop a new game. They often come up with an idea, then they scrap it off. You can find a lot of resources online describing how Rockstar works and how they go through a development cycle. Then they change ideas and they have to put in more hours of work to fix that idea, to improve, to come up with new formulas and to make things work, because making a game of that scale isn't just that easy. But what happened 2 years ago was the game was surrounded by a lot of controversies that came out from game journalists and the press at large. I'm gonna analyze in particularly a few articles here that I picked for you from Kotaku.com or Eurogamer and even GamesIndustry.biz, talking about the work conditions and about the fact that some of these companies have a proper culture of doing crunch, and that culture happens because the developers themselves they want to make the best game possible, right? And so this crunch has to happen. But in the recent years, we've seen a phenomenon of review bombing, of people boycotting the game, of gamers that are probably becoming a bit more self-aware as a consumer, and they're obviously becoming more vocal, sometimes a bit too vocal, sometimes pointlessly vocal, but yeah, they're starting boycotting things. So these new dynamics are coming up, where companies are now trying to look a bit more righteous and a bit more virtuous, like more recently has been the case with Cyberpunk. So I'm seeing, before I give you guys the mic, I'm seeing a certain parallelism between Rockstar Red Dead Redemption 2 years ago and CD Projekt Red with Cyberpunk now. Both games are surrounded by this rumors or crazy culture or imposed over time, and the game journalists are there trying to find dirt about them, and then sometimes you just have to accept that these people, these workers, they are working on the biggest games of the decade, and they have, or they want, or they feel it's necessary to put in these crazy hours. And gamers sometimes see that because of the game journalists that are trying to build up a story, gamers, see that part of the job as if these people were enslaved by the evil corporation to work on their computer 80 hours a week. And it's not untrue, but the story is a bit more complicated than that. And I know a bit about it because, I've worked in the games industry a little bit together with Prosil. He can claim to have been doing the same. So we know how things are, but I'm just gonna throw it out there and let you talk. I've done my introduction. When you're waiting for a much anticipated game and your developer says, no, sorry, it's delayed, how much does it impact you or annoys you? And does that annoy you more than when you hear stories about them being, having to do crunch and being terrible with their employees? What do you guys have to say? I'll leave it to you guys. Thanks a lot. Mik, Prosil.
I think I'll go first because I know that Prosil has a very big stance on this. You guys gravitate towards the industry more than I do, so I have probably less to say about. Probably I'm even more egoistical into this, but maybe not. Let's say that I think, and you guys can all agree that every job has its crunch time. If you work in a pizzeria, if you work in a restaurant, God damn it, if you work in a restaurant, if you work in a CD store, there's always going to be the customer that arrives when you're closing down. There's always going to be at the moment when somebody gets sick and you have to work for 2 people. There's always going to be the moment that your employers wasn't ready for this and you have to cover it. I think we live in a society that it's very fast and frantic about what we do and what we consume, and we want it quickly, we want it all, and we want more and more and more. Video games used to come out one every year. Kinda, that was it. Monkey Island 1, you wait for a little bit, a couple of years, Monkey Island 2, but they were short games to do. Nowadays it takes around 5 years to develop a decent game. If you don't have an engine.
Monkey Island, if I may quickly interrupt you, Monkey Island was probably developed by a team of like 8 people, and these games are developed by 8,000 people.
Yeah, totally. And I think that this world, everybody forgot that there is always a human component behind what you buy and what you do and what you choose to consume. We don't care. We don't really care, and we are willing to step on everybody to have the hot cup of coffee at the bar. We want everything as we are paying for. I am completely, perfectly okay with video games being delayed. Not so much so because I would like to avoid the crunch time. We will talk about it maybe later, but even Cyberpunk will have some crunch time, right? Even though it was delayed many times. These things happen in my job as well. I have to cover colleagues sometimes and I get out later. I would rather though wait to have a product that has been done by people that maybe had a little bit more time to get into that artsy mood set instead of being cold-blooded machines, and they will be no matter what, unfortunately. But maybe if delaying the video game a month might give it that final touch, that final artsy effect, I am really willing to wait. And you can really rush art just in general. You couldn't be like, Van Gogh, did you do that? Can you cut your ear faster? You can't really do that.
And the other thing about art is that if you are inspired, you're not gonna work 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
You like, as there are artists 12, who work 16. 30 hours, as in straight. Yeah. You could literally find a painter that told you, I couldn't stop, I had to work 30 hours.
Absolutely.
So
I guess the moment we sell art, we make it a business. It's weird. It's an oxymoron. It kind of gets into a weird place. Mm-hmm. Although put it on my grave, I am willing to wait a month or a year for a video game. Don't make it faster for me, please. That Cyberpunk, they can even delay it more. I'll play it. I'll play even the Rockstar game. I'll play it like 2.5 years after, but I'll play it.
But the point is that you cannot delay something forever, because delaying means increasing the cost.
That's true.
And you make it more and more costly, and eventually you no longer break even, and you develop the game for 10 years, and you're gonna destroy your company. Prosil, does it affect you when you hear about crunch stories or when you hear about delays, and how do you compare the two, and how do you fight against the two? And then we're gonna talk about the hypocrisy and certain mechanism of us as gamer, which I have prepared for you. Prosil, what's your thoughts?
It's difficult to be concise here. So it doesn't bother me when a game is delayed. I think what the problem is the hype that is generated around the game. Last time I was bothered by a delay was Metal Gear 5, which was, delayed, I think, once or twice. And we know how the game was released. So going back, I will be bothered if they took 2 more years to finish the game. That's the part. Regarding crunch, it's a difficult one because crunch, there are 2 methodologies of doing crunch. One is where employees are spoiled and they are forced to. The other one is where employees really like to do crunch because they feel part of the project, they feel involved. Because for some of them, it's a matter of pride working on weekends and being there when the game needs them, right? They feel like rewarded of work on the project. And when I work on project in the past, I cannot name the project, but even AAA titles, it was the same thing. It wasn't a problem for me doing a weekend overtime. But I admit that when you do a full week and then you do a weekend with 12 hours in a row, you pretty much exhausted. So the quality that you can deliver is not the same as it would be when you go around 8 hours work. So that's really the point. When we read about Rockstar, we know a lot about employees that cannot see their families, cannot see their friends. They barely have lives. Apparently, I've also read about people bringing sleeping bags in their offices,
Yep.
which make things very, very frustrating, claustrophobic, very dark. And I don't know how a game how this can bring happiness into a game. However, when I look at the game like The Last of Us 2, I think that amount of detail brought into the games are not because of spoiled people, but because of people that wanted really to participate to the project itself, like the blood on the snow or things like details like in graphics, and how these flow in a PS4. I think that cannot be just because people did crunch. So yeah, there are 2 types of crunch, resuming. One is the voluntary crunch, and the other one is the one when employees are forced. And I would assume there is a 3rd type of crunch, which are the people that still want to contribute to the game and do their utmost, but they have other colleagues that are very competitive. I talked before about people that brag about doing crunch or feels like, yeah, of course I'll do it, because they feel like that's the right moment to contribute to the game. But there are people that can do exactly the same job without feeling forced as well. So I think it's a very vicious mechanism. As a matter of fact, if I should choose, that should be forbidden. Crunch should be forbidden. Also because a game like Red Dead Redemption 2 is like a multi-millionaire game. Like we're talking about a game that makes a ton of money, and I think it's enough to hire people and not forcing them to do crunch as they should. Of course, a bit of crunch is needed, but sleeping bags for months, I think that's unfair.
Force, yeah, I totally agree. Force crunch sucks.
I think that as Prosil was saying, there is a very much an element of these massive productions where the level of details, the crazy things that you see in these games as their achievement, in terms of their achievement, it doesn't come because a manager says, oh, and then when that leaf is gonna touch the snow, the leaf is gonna get wet when the ray of sun arrives. No, it comes from the bottom. When you see those crazy details, it comes from that person that actually
Sure.
probably even had to go up to his manager and say, I want this thing to be in the game. And they had to probably, stop him from inflating costs of the game, etc., and going beyond scope. So it really comes from the bottom, as Prosil was saying. In the industry, there is that kind of crunch, and it's made worse by the fact that some people in the wrong culture, and it is a matter of culture, they have this thing of, yes, doing crunch, I'll do it, I'll just fucking fuck myself up. Because some people are like that when they talk about these games. Well, let's talk about gamers for a second. I want to push the conversation further. This game's another game that's coming out is Cyberpunk, and these, gamers are complaining. We recently, in recent times, we have heard rumors, or noise. We have seen review bombing on impeccable games such as The Last of Us 2. For the craziest reason, we are seeing people annoyed by Cyberpunk with the fact that it's being delayed or whatever. We are now seeing people complaining these days about Avenger, the new Square Enix game, the Avenger games. People are complaining that the content is not enough, they're waiting for the updates, but blah blah blah. So I'm seeing the hypocrisy, and it is what I see as a hypocrisy, as the fact that us gamers, we are becoming more and more vocal when a company is doing crunch, when people are saying, when you hear these articles, which are obviously what the press needs to sell copies and get clicks, and whenever there is a new games, the press is there to kind of check on the companies and come up with their articles saying like, oh, this new game is amazing, but yes, it's been made by crunch because people had to work whatever hours to make it happen. And as you said, well, something's gotta give. You need those hours. And so gamers are now becoming more vocal and going like, oh yeah, I'm gonna boycott this and this and that. But my problem, my hypocrisy, is that the same gamers who are now wanting companies to be better, the same gamers that want companies to be correct and righteous, and they are always ready to rally for this cause, they are the same gamers that would go after the developers as soon as there is a problem with a patch, as soon as a game doesn't have enough content on game as a platform, or as soon as there is anything. These people, you have developers or actors or other people involved in the game receiving death threats. So it's funny when you have a part of the community going like, hey, you big evil corporation, shouldn't treat your developers like this. And then a developer fucks up and the same community goes, fuck you, I'm gonna get you killed, motherfucker, I'm gonna they obviously rally against whatever is upsetting them at that moment in time. And I find that to be particularly hypocritical, and I find that the press is being a bit instrumental in this cycle, which I'm gonna describe a bit later. Because obviously these things that has been coming up now, this sort of attention for the crunch culture in companies, it caused companies to try to be better. You look at Ubisoft these days. Ubisoft fired everybody because, not everybody, but they fired some layers of management because there were instances of people being mistreated or sexual harassment in the workplace at Ubisoft. And so they went there and they obviously tried to clean their face by firing the management. And CD Projekt Red has tried to do the same, reassuring everybody that they were not going to do crunch time. And now the journalists are actually finding that of course they're going to do crunch time because companies are having to look righteous and virtuous, and they're making all this statement and they're trying to look good, but it cannot be done because you don't know what making games is like. And so the companies are making bigger and bigger claims, trying, no, we're good guys, we're not evil corporation, we're the good guys. But the games and the ambitions of the games are getting bigger, and so when a game comes out next year, there's going to be, let's say, God of War 2, there's going to be Zelda, the new Zelda, there's going to be whatever, Uncharted 5 or whatever, and then the journalists are gonna be there waiting for, to quiz developers, and the developers are going to have to admit that of course they did crunch time, because how would you not do a game without crunch time? It's impossible not to avoid completely all the crunch time, because you don't know what you get yourself into. And at that point, the press finds you with this problem. They go to the gamers get more upset with the companies have to look even better, and they make even bigger claim, and this is a cycle. And I don't know, I still like that gamers are vocal on aspects of the games industry, but I want to say that in the end this is pointless, because with making these games, you cannot, crunch is always going to be there, because this sort of the details are impossible. This sort of work is impossible to obtain with the 9 to 5, and gamers are, obviously they care, but they shouldn't boycott the game. And I think that what Prosil was saying earlier is really true, because imagine you're working at Naughty Dog, or imagine you're working on Cyberpunk, you're working on you're working at Rockstar. You don't work in these companies because you want a cushy job. You want in this company because you want to make the best game of the decade. And so this is a broken system where gamers are trying to protect the developers from themselves, from the nature of the job, and in the meantime the companies are trying to look good, and the press is trying to catch them, to find dirt on them. So I don't know where this is going. What do you guys think about the culture that is coming up and that is being created in this last year by these dynamics, which obviously ended up resulting in crazy review bombings, like review bombings that have no meanings, but just because, people are upset because there is a big evil corporation out there, we need to stop them because we are gamers or whatever. I'll leave it to you guys. I've said my opinion. It's out there. Bam. Thank you. What do you think? Mik Prosil. Mik is gone.
I think that this thing will change or will end at some point. In the last probably 10 years, the video game market has changed so drastically. It's not like there's a big amount of people, but a few people passionate about video games and they want to have a good time. Now, video games, we talked about this on previous episodes. Now, video games are made mostly for kids and mom that have to buy video games for the kids. Not the whole market is full of those, but a lot of developers need to target those kids and those moms. So the numbers are bigger, the players are different, and until we change this, maybe we won't change it, but maybe until we change it, this mindset, I think it could go only worse from here. I don't see this slowing down at any point. Video games need to come back as a form of art, and they need to come back as a form of, that pleasure we used to have, adults, young teenagers playing video game, enjoying the story, and let's see where this goes. Instead of Call of Duty kills, I need more Call of Duty, give me more microtransaction now.
Don't you think it became too easy for gamers to reach out to the developers, to just be in touch with the developers? Because obviously developers want to have a conversation with the community, but then the community consists of a bunch of people always unhappy with something. And
you can tweet at Spielberg, it's not gonna care about you though. But if you tweet at EA, they're gonna be like, oh no, my customer is upset about the delay of that patch.
I don't know if EA is really like that, but in general, it scares me to think that people like that some actors from The Last of Us have received, death threats over the character that they were playing as, just because, obviously this has been the same for actors in cinema,
Yeah,
for ages. What I'm trying to think is that it wasn't like this in the games industry before, and in the recent years there's always going to be a bigger rage over things, and and crunch is it's just a byproduct of making ambitious game, so it's not gonna stop, and it's gonna become more and more vocal, and it's hypocritical when those same gamers are the ones that are really punishing with these companies. They're really, when they don't like something, gamers are really vocal and ruthless. And at the same time, that there seem to be some of them that they really against the crunch culture, but I find that just to be a strange compromise that cannot ever be met, and eventually is going to create some sort of strange short circuit. Prosil, what do you have to add on the topic?
Yeah, I agree with Mick that probably we should go back to have video games as a form of art. Not that all of them are not, but something has changed, and user consumerism has driven this part too much. I think that in a way, with the internet and a lot of information that go around, it will settle by itself, but we will need, around 10 years for it to happen. The same we've seen video game changing 10 years ago. Now I think this will change and everything will be settled. I also assume that home testing will be more and more open nowadays. If you think about, testing a beta was something like they did try on Dark Souls many years ago remotely. I think you can still do this up to a certain level. I think that a lot of part of game development will be made remotely, and will give the chance to employees to contribute to games without having to crunch too much, or without having a manager that tells them you need to do, you need to be here even though you have nothing to do. So I think things will change. It will just need time.
The thing is that, as I was saying, the fact that people are now very careful about the topic of crunch is causing companies to make bigger claim. And some companies, they have started saying that, like, we are gonna make games without resorting to crunch, or just resorting to the minimum crunch, and journalists are now gonna be there to catch them foul and find dirt on them when they obviously don't manage to do it. The reality of game making is that there are a lot of people that, like this article from 2 years ago, say, here is how you avoid video game development. And then they talk on these articles about, you don't need to work too many years, look, too many hours. We only do very little overtime, and this is our company, and this is what we do. And they release interview about their method of not doing any crunch. But with all due respect, these companies are very small, and the scope of their project is very different from, bigger companies, which are international conglomerates of studios that are cooperating on a single code, which will contribute to being a single product, which will serve millions of people. So people obviously give you tips about things like leaderships and things like that. But at the end of the day, these things are really just inapplicable in the context of a situation where Rockstar, because this gaming culture, this crunch cultures came up from within these companies themselves, because that's the job when you're doing crazy things, and it's bad culture, and there's nothing you can do about it. And it's good that we have the press really watchful over this topic, and really trying to find dirt on the companies and trying to keep the companies to their promises. But I believe that the promises that we're seeing in the game from companies are totally unrealistic. No, we are not going to make games without crunch. We're not going to make, well, we can make games without crunch. I work in video game companies that doesn't make crunch. Very little overtime ever. Not even ever mandatory. Of course, but it's completely different kind of project, different kind of market we're looking at. So I'm scared that eventually, people, this is not going to stop by itself, because these claims are being made and they cannot be respected. Making games of this scale is just a matter of doing the impossible. As you said, Mick, I think somehow you recapped it in a very efficient way with your first example. It's like when you were a pizza chef, or when you are a pizza chef and you have a customer arriving at 10:30 when you're about to shut down. And video game development is really like that all the time. Your schedule is completely thrown off in this regard.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
So I don't think that gamers can understand that, and I don't think we are dealing with journalists that are able to say it. Journalists don't say it because it's not compliant to law. So the journalist is always going to side from the side of the law. You're never going to find a journalist that tells you, yeah, this company is making crunch. I think we should thank them for that, because otherwise the game will never come out. It's not a matter of delaying. As I was saying, it's not a matter of delaying. You cannot delay a game because it doesn't become better automatically. It only becomes more expensive. And
more expensive is more problematic.
More expensive is more problematic because you need to sell more copies, and selling more copies puts more pressure on those same people. In fact, their work conditions could get worse in future projects if they have to sell more copies to begin with. So crunch is the only way to make everything come through one single hoop within a certain time schedule. So yeah, anything else you guys want to add to this crazy topic, which we're gonna maybe review 10 years from now to see how the industry has changed? But it's been an interesting little topic. Anything else you want to add to this?
I want to add like a very minor, tiny things. Actually, two, but same sentence. I think that Metal Gear Solid 5 would have been awesome with crunch time.
That's exactly what game journalists should have been said. These guys haven't done enough, nowhere near enough crunch time.
They put cameras into the Kojima production. They weren't allowed to go out more.
Give us more.
What is the last part?
Yeah.
I don't want matter base. I want a story.
Yeah, I don't know.
And Resident Evil 3 remake would have needed like another 2,000 hours of work.
The crazy thing is that I don't think not even crunch time could have saved Metal Gear Solid 5
or RE3
remake. I think that was
probably you could have saved Resident Evil. You could save Metal Gear Solid 5. You fire Kiefer Sutherland. You do crunch.
With the money that you save, you can actually hire
so much money, so much more money.
Cool.
Nobody needed to work on weekends.
Prosil, what do you think about crunch? Is crunch necessary? I mean, we talked about crunch in itself, but sorry, what do you think? Is there anything else we want to add? And am I completely selfish in saying that developers should just do the crunch that they need to do because they know in advance that they are going against an impossible goal, and that's gonna be part of the deal in a gig-based industry such as game development?
No, I don't think difficult, because it depends what type of developers you have. There is a lot of in video games there is a lot of different way of firing people and building teams. I believe if you have a solid team and you may really have an open policy of crunch that doesn't force employees to do crunch, but they can do whatever they want without signing any agreement. That's the real crunch. All the rest, I think, is it's poisoning the industry.
Guys, we're gonna stop this segment here. Make sure you follow this playlist of different topics, different opinions that we have on the Game Too Late YouTube channel. I'm gonna thank my two amazing guests, which you can find on Twitch. Mick Mayo is on Twitch. You can find him. He streams a bit of everything. And these days, what are you streaming, Mick?
Shadow of War, which is the follow-up to Shadow of Mordor.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. And The Walking Dead, now season 2. We got season 1. Now season 2 will go until the end of whatever happened to Clementine, because I don't know.
Yeah, okay, cool. And I invite you guys to follow Prosil at twitch.tv. Prosil, you play too much. And Prosil, what are you gonna be playing in these days, this future? Are you gonna be playing Red Dead Redemption 2? And are you gonna marvel at all that crunch time made graphics?
No, I think I'm gonna replay The Last of Us. There are a couple of achievements, like
No
finishing
spoiler.
finishing the game without dying, and hardcore mode, which I still need to platinum the game now. I have these 2 trophies. I'll be busy. Plus, I think I'll finish Neo probably. Yeah.
Cool. You guys are going to be doing video game crunch time yourself in playing the games. As for me, I am Game Too Late. This was the Talk Too Late show, which you can find on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Follow our Facebook page, follow our YouTube, reach out. Thanks again to my 2 amazing guests, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video in about a week or so. Follow the channel, stay tuned, stay safe, and stay crunchy. Bye bye.
Bye.